Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining me for another Hormonology tip. I'm Gabrielle Lichterman, founder of Hormonology, creator of the Hormone Horoscope Menstrual Cycle Tracker apps for women and teen girls, and the Female Forecaster app for boyfriends and husbands of cycling women, and author of 28 Days, What Your Cycle Reveals About Your Moods, Health, and Potential. This little sticky note's going to come in handy later, and you'll see why. Today, I want to talk to you about your week 2. Now, if you've been following Hormonology at all, then you know that pretty much I want every day of your cycle to be great. But you probably also know that there are certain days in your cycle when your hormones make it easier to feel great, to feel energized and upbeat. And specifically, these days that are best in your cycle that make it easier to feel great are your week 2 days. And week 2 spans the week leading up to and including ovulation. So there's week 1, your period week 2, the week leading up to including ovulation, week 3, the 8 days following ovulation, and week 4, your premenstrual phase. Today we're going to be talking about your week 2. So week 2, according to Hormonology and every study ever, your hormones are supposed to be making this a week when life is just easier. And that's because estrogen is high and rising. It's spiking. And when estrogen is at an elevated height, an elevated level, and it's rising, it boosts mood, it boosts energy, it spikes your libido, it gives you more endurance, more physical strength. You're happier, you're more sociable, you're friendlier, you're more optimistic, you're more confident. There's just so many great things that high and rising estrogen do for you. So it's really sad when I get an email or a message from somebody who says, "Why isn't my week 2 great? What is wrong with me? What is going on? I have a lousy week 2." So I want to talk to you about that today in today's Hormonology tip. If you're having a lousy week 2, when your hormones are supposed to be making it great, we're going to talk about the most common problems and how to fix them. Okay. So if your week 2 isn't awesome, the most common culprit is low iron. I know, you've been getting iron in your diet, you've been taking iron supplements, whatever it is. Maybe you have never even thought of iron, but it's such a weird yet easy fix. And here's why. So during your week 1, as we said, that's your period week. When you bleed during menstruation, your body loses iron. It's losing iron in your blood that you release. And that brings down your body's iron level. And when that happens, research shows that this dip in iron triggers irritability, fatigue, insomnia, anxiety, sadness. Do any of these symptoms sound familiar in your lousy week 2? That's because they're all symptoms of low iron. Now, the research is clear. Your iron level doesn't need to drop low enough for you to become clinically anemic, meaning you have low iron problem, a condition. It just has to dip a little to trigger these bothersome symptoms. So during your week 1, your period week, you're shedding menstrual fluid, you're shedding blood, which brings down your iron. So by the time week 2 rolls around, your body is now experiencing this dip in iron. And when you experience a dip in iron, it reduces the level of serotonin in the brain. And that's because iron is one of the many things required to make serotonin in the brain. And serotonin is a chemical that helps you boost your mood, regulate sleep, reduce anxiety, boost your energy. And that's the other thing that iron is needed for. Energy, mental and physical energy. That's because iron is a mineral that helps bring oxygen to all the cells in the brain and body. So when you're low in iron, you're foggy and fatigued. Again, does this sound familiar? Does this sound like the challenges you're facing in week 2? Are you sad? Are you tired? Are you grumpy and irritable? Are you so mentally foggy you can't do what you need to do? Are you anxious? All signs of low iron. Now, here's the thing. Iron is kind of a finicky mineral, and if you think you're taking iron, so it can't possibly be low iron, foods or beverages you're consuming can be blocking the absorption of iron. Or you may mistakenly think that there's tons of iron in a food you're consuming when really there's just a little bit. For instance, a lot of us grew up, well, I'm old enough to have grown up on Popeye cartoons where he would eat the spinach and load up on iron. Well, the truth is, spinach only contains a small amount of iron. And on top of that, it's a plant-based iron. And that type of plant-based iron, called non-heme iron, is more difficult for the body to absorb and use. So if you are a vegetarian or vegan or avoiding animal products and you're getting your iron from plant-based foods, you may not be getting enough. Your body may not be absorbing it. And one way to help absorb that iron is to pair non-heme or plant-based iron foods with a food rich in vitamin C, like bell peppers or citrus fruit. But if you're consuming what you believe are iron-rich foods, and that includes beans and beef and even fortified cereal, and you're still not feeling that bump, you may want to talk with your doctor about supplementing. In the U.S., our RDA, our guidelines for iron is 18 milligrams daily for women ages 19 to 50. And while getting that is great, going overboard is bad. If you feel that your iron is low, don't take more than 18 milligrams unless directed by a healthcare provider. That's because getting too much iron at once, too much daily iron, can be problematic. And another thing you want to ask your healthcare provider about is if you have an iron metabolizing disorder called hemochromatosis. If that's the case, then supplementing with iron is really not the best choice for you. But for everybody else, talk with your healthcare provider about upping that iron and see what happens. And don't expect miracles right away, because sometimes it takes a full cycle or 2 cycles or even 3 cycles to feel that change in energy and mood and anxiety and sleep. Because what you're doing is you're building up your body's store so that when menstruation comes and you're shedding that menstrual fluid, you're shedding that blood with the iron, and you're experiencing a natural depletion of that iron, it doesn't go so low as to trigger those symptoms that make your week 2 lousy. So to some, one of the most common problems causing a lousy week 2 is low iron. And if you up your intake of iron-rich foods or supplement up to 18 milligrams daily for women 19 to 50, daily, every day of your cycle, that can fix that issue so that when your period comes and you have a little bit of a dip, it doesn't fall so low, so that you can enjoy that great mood and great energy and the great sleep and less anxiety that week 2 has in store. Okay, so that's one common reason behind week 2 problems. But there are a couple of others that you should know about. Okay, so the second most common culprit behind a lousy week 2 is anxiety. If you get to your week 2 and you start to feel on edge, jittery, you start to worry, get panic attacks, one reason may be that you are more sensitive to spiking estrogen. When estrogen gets high and is rising, what's happening in your brain is it's getting a little bit too overexcited. Now, if you remember what I said about iron, one of the symptoms of low iron is anxiety. That's because iron is needed to create serotonin in the brain, and when there's not enough iron, there's not enough serotonin, a little bit of an imbalance. So one of the things that you'll want to try is that iron tip, is that replenishing iron. But if you've been supplementing with iron, your iron levels are fine, and you don't feel it's iron, you may have to accept that you have a higher sensitivity to spiking estrogen. And that spiking estrogen is creating a little bit overexcitement in your brain. So, what can you do? Well, honestly, first being aware of that is like 90% of the of the cure, because at least you don't feel like it's something you're in your own mind. It's real. This is real. Your anxiety hits during your week 2 simply because of the way your brain is wired, and it's real. And knowing that is so important because you can plan ahead. You can say, look, I know my anxiety is going to spike during this time because of hormonal sensitivity. I'm going to do what I can to rein in that anxiety and to cope with my anxiety and maybe even overcome it during that phase. You may have gone to a cognitive behavioral therapist and learned tools. Use those tools, especially during your week 2, or rely on other methods. Um, Drink chamomile tea, which has a mildly calming effect, or do more meditation, do more yoga, do more Tai Chi, pray more. Do things that are calming for you, and when you can, avoid the things that can trigger anxiety or exacerbate anxiety symptoms. If you are taking a prescription for anxiety, and you're taking it at the time that you're feeling anxious, then this is the time that you would make sure that your prescription is filled, or your medication, whatever supplement or medication that you're using is on hand, because now you know ahead of time, okay, week 2 is when I'm going to be challenged because of my greater sensitivity to spiking estrogen, so you can plan ahead. This is one of the benefits of syncing your life with your cycle. You may not be able to overcome the challenge, but you can be prepared to meet it and cope with it. And hey, maybe you'll even find that you one day can overcome it because you find a constellation of treatments that work during those days, those cycle days when you're most challenged, and that you can then thwart those symptoms. Okay, so we've had 1 is low iron, 2 is anxiety, which PS again might be related to low iron, and then 3. So the third possibility, the third reason your week 2 may not be a great week 2 is because of the way you're wired to respond to your hormones. There was one study, but it was a very intriguing study, that found some women are wired to respond in an opposite way to their hormones. Now, in this study, there was like over 200 women who were studied, examined, and 13%, which is kind of a substantial amount. 13% were found to be wired opposite. And by that, I mean their week 2 wasn't great. They had a lousy mood, low energy, they were more irritable. And yet during their week 4, their premenstrual phase, their mood rose, their energy lifted. They felt great. So the researchers leading that study saw this interesting pattern, that this minority of women, this small number of women, responded to hormones in an opposite way to the majority of women in the study. So it's possible. Now, more research needs to be followed up because it was just one study, but it is possible that you could be wired to respond to hormones in a different way. And if you find that cycle after cycle, week 2 is your lousiest week and week 4 is your best week, your greatest week, you feel just confident, and you may be one of these women who's wired in an opposite way. And knowing that is so freeing, because at least you'll have this self-understanding. And again, you can plan your life according to your personal sensitivity to your hormones. Okay, so week 2 isn't your greatest week. If you know that your mood or energy or sleep are going to be on the low end of your scales, then you have to plan. You have to plan ahead for mood boosters, energy lifters, sleep helpers. You know that you have to plan ahead to make these aspects of your life better, just as anyone else would in their premenstrual phase if they were having similar challenges. So you're just swapping it. So the fourth and final cause of a lousy week 2 is that you may have an underlying condition that you haven't really faced, or that you um, wanted to ignore, or maybe that you didn't realize was impacting your week 2. For instance, you may have low-level depression or a high amount of stress, and you haven't really acknowledged it. Sometimes these things can be difficult to face. Say you're taking care of an elderly parent, or somebody with a lot of special needs, and you're not replenishing yourself. You're not giving yourself self-care that you deserve, and you're not acknowledging that you're under a lot of stress because of the extra demands on your time and energy and patience. You're not going to have a great week 2 no matter how high your estrogen rises, because certain things just eclipse our hormonal effects, and things like stress and depression and pain. Chronic pain is another one that can eclipse the benefits that we would normally get from our hormones. Now, what can you do with this? Well, the great thing is knowing that you're supposed to have a great week 2, because your spiking estrogen is creating changes in the brain that boost your mood, energy, improve your sleep, libido, etc. You can use that knowledge as a baseline and say, okay, this is what my hormones are supposed to be doing to me, and I'm not feeling that. My mood isn't great, or my sleep isn't great, or my libido isn't great. So you use what is supposed to happen as a baseline, and if something isn't lined up with that, you can see that is a red flag, and it's time to look at and examine your life. What's going on in your life that may be holding back these hormonal benefits? Really, really closely examine. Are you challenged by low-level depression? Is it time to talk to a therapist or healthcare provider? Are you challenged by a ton of stress and you just don't want to acknowledge it? Maybe work or school is just bearing down on you, and you're trying to, keep a stiff upper lip, and you think you're supposed to handle it all yourself, but maybe talking to somebody can help, or talking to another employee, or, a coworker, or talking to another student can help. So if you're trying to handle everything yourself and you're under a lot of stress, or you're feeling a lot of pain and um, you're not getting the relief you need from the healthcare providers' treatments, don't just put up with it. Go out into the world and find another healthcare provider or another way to get treatment. Maybe joining a support group is what would help you. So if you're having a lousy week 2 and it's not your iron, and it's not anxiety, and you don't feel like you're one of the minority of women who is wired differently, remember to know that your week 2 would be lousy, but your week 4, your premenstrual week, would be what your week 2 would normally be, very high. If you're none of those 3, it's possible that you have a challenge that needs to be resolved. And once you do resolve it, you can have that great week 2 again. So hopefully all of these signs and tips have helped you, because I want you to have a great day every day of your cycle. And if you're not having a great week 2, when your hormones are making it easiest to have a great week 2 for the majority of us, then I definitely want you to go out there and try to uncover the blocks and resolve those blocks. So since I talked about iron before, I want to mention again that iron is such a finicky mineral. You could be consuming iron-rich foods, but then something you do is still lowering your level of iron, something you're drinking or eating or maybe doing, because athletes need more iron. So I'm going to put in the caption below some links to where you can learn a little bit about iron and what blocks absorption and what enhances absorption. Again, if you're a vegetarian or vegan, or you're avoiding animal-based foods, pairing non-heme plant-based iron with vitamin C-rich foods enhances absorption. So I want you to learn about that. So I'm going to, I'll look around, I'll get some links and put them in the caption for you so that you understand how iron works and how to get more of it. So I think that's it. Are there any questions? If there are no questions, oh, there was one thing I promised you. I said that the sticky note I put on my book was going to come in handy at the start of this video. Sticky note. Everything I just said in this video is in this book. I know, you would think that however many times I have said that with all those videos, it's in the book, it's in the book. You'd think this would be like 5 times thicker. I did include a lot of information in this book because I want you to have all this information in one place. I want you to have a manual to your menstrual cycle that helps you make every day better. And so I've tried to include as much as possible in one place. And it's still easy to read because, as I mentioned in earlier videos, I set up these tabs so that you can just find where you are in your cycle. Those are the days in your cycle. Those tabs are the weeks in your cycle. Week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4, and then those are all your days. And this is the page where we just talked about. It's page 167 in the paperback version. And so if you missed anything in this video, it's in the book. And this book is available, Amazon.com, available around the world. So that's why I keep pushing the book, because it's such a great hormonology tool. There's so much in it. And it's also why it took so long to write, because there is just so much in it. But I wanted it to be comprehensive because I want this to be the one tool you need to turn to. So you don't have to, read a tip here or watch a video there. Everything's in the book. Everything I just talked about is in the book. So I'm looking at the comments now. Yes. Yes, this book is actually much bigger than the original. This is more than twice as big. So it's twice as many pages, and it's bigger because there is so much more information. And I know that my hormone horoscope apps and the female forecaster apps are really popular. I've had more than 1 million downloads. I get emails all the time about how people love my apps. But those are really just an introduction. Even the pro version, which is more detailed and does give you a lot of information, is still not nearly as detailed as the book. And that's because it's an app, and you can't just put everything in an app. There's just not enough room. So if you really want the details and the updated studies, because I've included so much more, and tips, the book is really your go-to. I love my apps, my hormone horoscope apps. I'm very proud of them. But this book is really the manual to your menstrual cycle. So I'm glad that somebody's going to get a copy. Thank you. And well, I guess that's it. I don't see any questions. But if you want to ask me questions, I'm here every Sunday at 12:15 p.m. Eastern Time doing a live stream. So you can ask me questions. You can write them down and wait for me to do these videos, and I'll be happy to answer them. Thank you. I like the idea of a manual to my menstrual cycle too. It's just so handy. I just want to make all this information convenient for you. All right. So until next time, thank you for watching this video. I hope you found it helpful. And let me know if this helped you have a better week too, because I want to find out. Email me at gabrielle@myhormonology.com, and you can learn more about how your hormones impact you every day at my website, myhormonology.com. Thank you so much for watching this video. Until next time.